sound. Good morning and welcome to Faithfully Memphis. This is Bishop Phoebe Rowe of the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee, coming to you from Crosstown Concourse. We air on 91.7 FM WYXR. And each week we have an opportunity to speak with the person about their ministry and work and the role of faith in their life. So we always begin the program with a segment called Stump the Bishop, which is an opportunity for us to share a little bit about a person who is noted in church history. And I want to highlight this morning Saint Columba of Iona, a Celtic saint who was born in Ireland in the year 521. And early in life, he showed scholarly and pastoral ability. So he was ordained as a priest in the year 551. And 12 years after his ordination, Columba and a dozen companions set out for northern Britain. Now, at this time, many of the folks living in that area didn't know anything about Christianity. Well, Columba was very kindly received, and he was actually allowed to preach the gospel, to baptize, and to convert people to Christianity. And he also had possession of a small island called Iona on the western coast of Scotland, and he founded a monastery there. And it's really from that location that he spread Christianity throughout all of that part of Britain. I had an opportunity to take a pilgrimage to Iona maybe in 2014 or 2015. They still have a practicing Christian community there, and it is a thin place, as some people would say, where you really feel the Lord's presence. And so the impact of St. Columba, more than 1,500 years later, continues to be felt. So on this day, we do give thanks for St. Columba and the folks who worked with him to spread the gospel. And just as an aside, our own Episcopal Camp and Conference Center here in the Diocese of West Tennessee is called St. Columba. So I would like to read the prayer that is assigned for St. Columba. And following that, we will play a hymn that is regularly sung there. So this is his prayer. O God, who by the preaching of your servant Columba caused the light of the gospel to shine in Scotland, grant, we pray, that remembering his life and labors, we may show our thankfulness to you by following the example of his zeal and patience, through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will
Welcome back to Faithfully Memphis. So my special guest in the studio this morning is Rob Clark. And Rob is the president of the Tennessee Laymen's Episcopal Conference. And the first one was actually held in 1947 in Mount Eagle, Tennessee, which is very close to Sewanee. So Episcopal laymen have gathered in person every year since 1947, except last year, and because of COVID. So we transformed and had a virtual conference last year, but this year, which is our 75th anniversary, we are so excited about the fact that we will be back in person. And so I'm going to have Rob give us a little bit of information about the conference, which includes opportunities for fun, for fellowship, and for faith, as well as a barbecue cooking contest and guest speakers every year. So Rob, welcome to Faithfully Memphis.
Thank you, Bishop Phoebe. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Excellent. So now can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and what was the role of faith in your life as a child?
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a cradle Episcopalian, so I went to church at St. Martin in the Fields in northeast Atlanta. Was baptized, confirmed in that church, was an acolyte, participated in EYC, all of the great Episcopal opportunities that you have. I went away to college at the University of Alabama, and I must say my first kind of real life discussions about faith occurred at the University of Alabama. I just happened to be paired with a roommate from Tuscaloosa who was a Church of Christ member. And so, as you can imagine, he and I had some lively discussions. I'll never forget one of the first days we were talking. He looked at my bookshelf and he said, "Where's your Bible? I don't see your Bible." And I reached over to the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer, and I said, "Well, here's my Bible." And he said, "That's not the Bible." So we had he was great. Still am in touch with Pat to this day, good friend. But I would say, when you talk about faith and really a relationship with Christ, that was really kind of a tipping point for me in terms of opening my awareness that, there are other faiths outside of Episcopal faith, and what does that really mean to be a Christian? And so eventually ended up in Memphis after graduate school at Ole Miss, and so I've been in Memphis 35 years.
Wow.
I'm pretty much a Memphian now, and I've got helped raise two wonderful children. They're both grown now. Sally, my oldest, is an actor in New York City, and my son Gray works for a general contractor here in Memphis. So, thrilled. They both went to school at Grace St. Luke's here. Went to church at Grace St. Luke's, where I'm a parishioner. And so, my walk has really been one of faith is a cornerstone of my life. I'm very, very happy to feel the presence of God every day. I do pray several times a day, just quietly to myself. But I think that that kind of practice, I guess, again, it's been an evolution. One that I've kind of worked into my daily life, and I feel a wonderful sense of His love and truly a peace that does pass understanding. It's hard to describe, but I would say that's kind of a quick overview. I do work. So my vocation, I went to grad school, got a master's in healthcare management. So I've been in the healthcare field all of my professional life. Started out with the Baptist Health System here in town. For the last 20 years, I've worked at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Wonderful, humbling place to work. And so I've been very blessed to have those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I love your notion of sort of your walk with Christ being something that you connect with every day. And ultimately, it's far more than just the 2 or 3 hours that we spend on Sunday morning, right? For us to really reap the benefits of that relationship, it's so beneficial when it's seamlessly woven into all aspects of our lives. So it's great to hear you say that. So we're here this morning because we want to promote the Tennessee Episcopal Laymen's Conference. And I wonder if we go back in the day, do you have have you heard any interesting stories about the sorts of things that the men maybe did in the early years of the conference that are funny or insightful that maybe we don't even do anymore in the current version of the conference?
That's a great question, Bishop. I wish that I had a better knowledge of those early days because, as you noted, the conference has been going on. It'll be our 75th year. It's interesting. I've done several men's conferences at St. Columba, which you referenced earlier this morning, which I always enjoyed. And, of course, it's easy to get to living in Memphis. A friend of mine, Judge John McCullough, parishioner at Grace St. Luke's, has been a longtime attendee of the Episcopal Laymen's Conference over in Monteagle. And he tried for years to get me to go. He said, "Oh, Rob, you'd really get a lot out of it." And I always had good reasons why I didn't go. I was raising children. I was working. It's a 4.5-hour drive over there. So eventually I said yes. That was about 7 years ago, I guess, the first time I went. And, it was one of those things that once I went, I was like, oh, wow, I wish I'd started going years ago. Yeah. But I've been every year since, and it's just a wonderful weekend of fellowship and fun and faith, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. So why do you think men continue to participate? I know one of the things that they do each year is they acknowledge the man who has been coming for the longest number of years. What is it that draws people to return, do you think?
I think it's kind of like a homecoming or a family reunion. Oftentimes, this is the only time of the year you see friends that you've made there at the conference over the years. You get an opportunity to visit with them. As you mentioned, there are certain activities that have over the years kind of grown, and people really look forward to that. There's the opportunity to play golf on Saturday afternoon. Some guys like to go fly fishing. Of course, beautiful hiking trails nearby there on the mountain and around Swanee. We also just have ample opportunities for relaxation and napping, which some guys don't get the opportunity to do. But the conference center is very expansive and has there's a pool there. Some people like to swim. So, but I think probably the thing that guys look forward to most is just the discussions after the formal meetings are over at the end of the day. Right. People hanging out. There are great cabins there to sit out on the porch. And thankfully, in August in Tennessee, the temperature is about 15 degrees cooler than here in Memphis. So that's an added benefit.
Yeah. So for a gentleman who may be hearing about the conference for the first time, can you give a sense of sort of the schedule? Like, when would you arrive, and what's the general schedule of the weekend?
So the weekend begins Friday afternoon registration, and it's pretty much opened at 1:00, and we register guys, until about 5. We have dinner. The conference has 3 keynote speakers, and so our first keynote happens Friday night, and our speakers this year we're very, very thrilled. One is Dr. Peter Doherty, who is a former faculty member, a virologist at St. Jude. He actually won the Nobel Peace Prize while he was a faculty member for his research in infectious diseases. And I should tell you that each conference has a theme. Our theme this year is life after ... So how do we deal with life transitions faithfully, and how do we embrace them and thrive afterwards? So obviously, after a year of the pandemic, Dr. Doherty is going to talk about life after COVID. We also, Saturday morning, will be our second keynote speaker, which will be former U.S. Senator from Tennessee, Bob Corker. Bob retired from the Senate 2 years ago, so he'll talk about life after politics. And then our final keynote speaker will be someone we're very much looking forward to, is your brother, Willie Roaf. Former NFL football player, Hall of Famer. Obviously, he will talk about his life after the NFL. And so I'm just thrilled at those three speakers. So with that theme as a backdrop, there will be other kind of smaller breakout sessions that we're going to be led. Again, these are informally around a campfire at night with some of the laymen who participate, and we're still working out the details of those. But it will be centered around that theme of life after retirement, possibly life after divorce or death in your family, life after something positive, life after your first child, your life changes.
Forever.
So there are so many ample discussion opportunities, and so I would say, outside of those three keynote speakers, we also have meetings for each diocese. Of course, one of the great things about the conference, all three bishops of the three Tennessee dioceses always come. We're thrilled to have the opportunity as laymen to interact with you and the other two bishops, just in a very relaxed setting. Again, you're not there except in a few formal capacities, which we're thrilled. On Sunday we have our final event of the conference is service and Eucharist at All Saints Chapel there on Swanee. So, like any other conference, you're fed well here.
Yes.
We have a fish fry Friday night. Saturday, we have a barbecue cooking contest. There are several groups that always come with their rigs. We encourage anyone who's listening who may have an interest in coming and is a barbecue aficionado. We'd love to have you participate in that. So Saturday afternoon is reserved for whatever activity you choose to do, or napping. We reconvene for dinner Saturday, and then, as I said, we have our final keynote speaker, and then Sunday morning is the Eucharist. So that's our weekend.
So I know I had a really interesting experience in 2019. I had been consecrated in May and came up to the Holy Mountain that August, and it must have been 200 men and me as the first female bishop
that was a first
in the state of Tennessee. So it was actually a lot of fun. I thought this is probably a good ratio, 200 men to one woman. But it was a really great opportunity, as you said, to have interesting, relaxed conversations with people that in the midst of my normal, busy, hectic schedule, I don't have that time to just sit and talk and share and listen.
Right.
So it was a great experience. Well,
and I can tell you, the guys really appreciated you being there, in particular with your unique gifts. And we did something that, again, I'm not sure that we had ever done before, at least not in the 7 years I've been going. But we had a laying on of hands by the bishops, which the guys really appreciated, and it was very impactful and meaningful to a number of us. So, you've already added at least one new tradition for us moving forward.
Yeah. So, Rob, one of the things that a lot of Episcopal churches and even Episcopal organizations are struggling with is this notion of how to attract our younger men. A lot of times you mention the great activities, EYC and youth group and things that you were involved with as a child. We were in our parents' household. But then when we leave for college, we lose so many of our young men and our young women. And it used to be the rule of thumb is, well, they'll get married in their mid to late 20s, and once they start having kids, they'll return to the church. But increasingly, that isn't happening. People are getting married later in life. And even some folks who were raised in the church, once they get married and have children, they don't choose to raise their children in the church. So I wonder, what sorts of conversations have the organizers of this conference done around maybe things that we need to add or augment to specifically attract, say, the men between the ages of, 25 and 40?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really is a fact that not just the Episcopal Church, but been a longtime member of the Rotary Club.
Yeah.
Those civic organizations of all kinds are it's a challenge because we have such a diversity now of opportunities to engage our time, and it's no longer limited to the rhythms of that. People that I grew up in, and I'll turn 60 next month. Of church and work and school and all those things. There's so many opportunities for people to access content and from their own homes and other places. So I think it really is a challenge, and we've struggled. Frankly, to wrap our arms around exactly how to do that. I think at the end of the day, we have to go find people where they are and bring opportunities to engage through that way. I love the fact that you're doing this broadcast once a week and in a podcast, and people can access it. And so I think the main challenge is just to get the word out that those opportunities exist, and again, encourage them and be a faithful presence when we can be around those folks.
Yeah. I know that, so there are currently 3 Episcopal dioceses in the state of Tennessee, and I know that each diocese has a core group of men who are involved. And one of the things you all have talked about is the possibility of doing maybe additional local events so that you can start building the relationships before you ask somebody to get in the car and drive 4.5 hours. Now, of course, COVID messed all of that up as well because we couldn't be in person. But that may be another something to sort of get some of the younger men connected with the older men, and they might be willing to make the trip.
I think that's right. And we have talked about again, under your leadership, the renovation of the Barth House at the University of Memphis campus, which is a beautiful space. I've had the opportunity to do actually a meditation retreat there that the rector at Grace St. Luke's, Ollie Rensher, led about a month ago, and it was a great mix of ages and different, very diverse group that went there. So I think that's going to be a wonderful opportunity for us moving forward to engage in small groups and really. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just about developing relationships. It's really not like it's like anything else. You have to develop those relationships to build trust and comfort, and then I think you could build upon that.
Yeah. So are you thinking about possibly doing some sort of an introductory event? And I guess we failed to mention the specific dates of the upcoming conference, so maybe we should do that. But are you thinking about doing something here locally in Memphis between now and August? Yes,
we're kicking around a couple of ideas, maybe meeting for a Redbirds game, or doing something at Barth House, do maybe a breakfast or a late afternoon. And thanks for mentioning the date. The conference is August 20th through 22nd. Registration is open right now. You can go to TennesseeChurchman.org. It's just TN Churchman, all one word, .org. Or the phone number to call at Dubose is 931-924-2353. Each parish will receive hard copy paper brochures in about a week that will be distributed. As you mentioned, there's there's typically one man designated at each parish. We call them the key man, and they're responsible for promoting the conference within their parish and getting the word out and assisting first timers who are not sure what to expect about the conference. So we will be starting in about a week, kind of moving into high gear. So this is great timing to be able to share with your listeners.
And you all normally send a couple of those brochures to the diocesan office as well. So if someone is listening and they're not connected with one of our congregations, you can always call the diocesan office at 901-937-4700, and we can get a copy of the brochure to you. And that leads me to another question, Rob. If someone is listening from a different faith tradition, who's maybe Church of Christ or Kojic or a different denomination, and they are interested, is it restricted to Episcopal laymen, or would any man be welcome?
It is totally open to any man who wants to come. In my emails to friends I've been sending out promoting, I said, don't let the word Episcopal Church or Tennessee scare you off from attending this conference, because you neither have to be Episcopal, churched, or live in the state of Tennessee. It is truly open to any man who wants to come, and we welcome everybody.
That's great. That's great. And so the DuBose Conference Center has been the host of this conference for many years, right?
It really
so
has.
Is there anything that you would like to share about DuBose and your experience there?
DuBose is just a wonderful gem that has been a part of the Episcopal Diocese for many, many years. I'm not sure how it started in its relationship with the diocese, but that has been the home to the conference. It's probably about 30 acres of property, and we've got a couple of hotel-style, dormitory-style rooms. We also have very rustic cabins. Those are without air conditioning. Not that you really need it on top of the mountain, but bunk beds. So you really have your choice of accommodations. You can men also stay at several of the local hotels that are in Monteagle and at Swanee. Obviously the pandemic was a real shock to conference centers like St. Columba, like DuBose. They have been able to survive the pandemic, and so they're very thankful that groups such as the Episcopal Laymen's Conference are coming back. I know they've had a couple of other conferences planned for this spring and summer. So we've done our best to support DuBose through our participation there. We have board members of the board meetings of the Episcopal Churchmen about once a quarter, and we typically hold those virtually, but we intentionally held those at DuBose this year so that we could help them out with some people staying there and some revenue.
Yeah, and I know that last year in 2020, even though it was virtual, you encouraged men to give a donation to DuBose as if they were going there to help them offset the loss in revenue from the group not being there in person.
That's right, and a lot of men were very faithful about contributing to that effort.
Yeah, that's great. So, Rob, you and I are of a similar generation, and I know certainly for my father's generation and my grandfather's generation, men tended to have very formal roles, right? There was the role of the man and the role of the woman, and those things were clearly defined. And we're in an era and an age now where it seems as if there's much more fluidity about roles of the genders. And I'm just wondering, from the standpoint of this conference for Christian laymen, have you all ever talked about or addressed the fact that just the role of the man in society has changed and is continuing to change?
I think that's a great topic for us to address. For the last, I can't recall that we've addressed that over the last few years, but I think that's definitely something that that we want to include as a discussion topic, because it is. I think it's a challenge to some of our older folks to embrace that idea. They grew up in certain roles and certain expectations. I think that's where you mentioned bringing our younger men into this fellowship. I think that's where that can be so helpful to help start those conversations and really provide some great insight from how, because they're living it right now. They're growing up with the idea, thankfully, that you're not limited,
right?
And in how we perceive others, we don't have to put people in boxes and frames that we always traditionally have.
Right.
So I think it's a great opportunity.
Yes, in a sense, sometimes those stereotypes or boxes are sort of shortcuts for us, right? If I see an individual and I immediately assign them to a category, then I miss out on the opportunity of getting to know the human being in front of me for who he or she is. And they may be very different from the stereotype that I have about that particular group, but it also takes more work. It takes effort. It takes me slowing down and really paying attention to the person, the image of Christ right in front of me.
And I think there's a fear that, I don't know how to interact with this person because I'm not from that faith or from that ethnic, traditions. And I think breaking down those barriers it helps us overcome that initial fear. And you're exactly right. I've always learned so much when I was able to interact with people who don't look like me, aren't of the same faith. As I mentioned with my college roommate.
Yes,
that was my first example of really coming to understand his perspective and why he believed what he believed.
Yeah. Well, I've heard many wonderful things about St. Jude, going back to your vocation there. And one of the things that St. Jude seems to be excellent at is creating an environment where children from not just all ethnic backgrounds, even from around the world, even children from other countries come there. And all of the families, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their religion, they feel welcomed and valued. Are there aspects of how St. Jude has organized that might be helpful as we think about creating an environment where everyone feels appreciated and acknowledged?
That's a great question. And St. Jude was founded on the principle that no child, regardless of their background, their race, color, creed, would ever be turned away for service. And Danny Thomas, the founder of St. Jude, was raised a Catholic. He was a practicing Catholic, but he made it clear that when he opened his hospital for to treat incurable diseases, that it would be in a place where everyone would be welcome. And he, again, intentionally, he could have started St. Jude in any city around the country, but his priest in Chicago at the time had spent some time in Memphis.
So that was the connection.
And that was the connection. He said, if you really want to build a hospital that's open to all, you should go to an area that's really challenged, not only from a healthcare perspective, but the racial divide, obviously, in the late 50s, early 60s was highly acute here in the South. And so Memphis, where Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, I mean, what better place to open a hospital that's truly open and welcoming to all? So, yeah, I think, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with the Laymen's Conference is get that message out that really, we welcome any man who is just interested in meeting new people, of learning. It's a weekend for learning, not only from our speakers who will have informative things to share from their individual perspectives, but just from talking to one another. And I know the first time that I attended the conference, I didn't really know a whole lot of people there.
Right.
Wasn't sure what the traditions of the conference were. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of cabins kind of scattered across the ground. So the first evening, I just walked from cabin to cabin and walked up, and guys were very welcoming, and I said, "Hey, I'm from Memphis. I don't really know anything. Tell me about what you all are doing." So I think that's a great opportunity for us for men to do that.
That's great, and I guess I want to also mention that there is limited scholarship assistance available. If a man has heard this conversation and really thinks at this point in his life, some time away from the normal routine with other men who are striving to live lives based upon Christian principles might be something helpful, we do have some limited scholarship assistance.
Yes, we do. We don't want the finances to be a barrier at all. So if you're interested in coming, we will find a way to help you to make sure you get there.
Great. Well, Rob, I really appreciate this conversation. I guess as we sort of wrap things up, we've gotten through a past tough year and a half, and so grateful that the vaccine is being rolled out and people are more comfortable being out and about. And I wonder, through this past year and a half, what has given you a sense of hope, or that has sort of lifted your spirit so that you didn't completely give into despair or discouragement with so many difficult challenges facing not only our country, but even us individually?
No, that's a great question. And, one of the fortunate things for me was during this pandemic, I lived downtown by the river. And so I've been working remotely for the most part, and having the opportunity to just walk outside, see the majesty of the Mississippi River, see the creation that God has laid out for us, and breathing that fresh air, I think, has been a big help to me personally, to remember and to have faith that yes, we're being challenged over the last year and a half, but this too shall pass, and we're going to learn things from this that we would never have learned, I think, about ourselves, about our society, about each other, that I think gives me hope for moving forward.
Wow. Well, thank you. So we really want to thank not only you and your role as president, but all of the key men and the members of the board of the Tennessee Episcopal Laymen's Conference who have really worked hard to prepare an outstanding conference this August. And so Rob has given a phone number at DuBose. I've given the number for the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee. If a man is listening and is interested, please do reach out. Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you so much, Bishop.
Control.
Lift high the cross, the love of Christ proclaim. A great song as we think about men gathering in Mount Eagle, Tennessee this August to reflect on what the past year has been like and to really be inspired to continue to persevere. So the next segment of the show is called Stump the Bishop. And I have a couple of questions from one of our young parishioners from Church of the Holy Communion. So the first question is, what is your favorite animal? I grew up in a household with a mother who loved animals. So growing up, we had dogs, cats, hamsters, fish, turtles, many different types of pets. But because I was the oldest, I was often the one that was kind of responsible for helping with the feeding or the changing of the kitty litter. So while I love pets, and I would say probably I would be more of a dog person than a cat person, I have never had a pet since I've lived on my own because of all of the responsibility that is connected with having pets. But I can say that both of my brothers and my sister all have pets. They are all pet people. My sister is 100% a cat person, and both of my brothers have several dogs. The second question is to give a sense of a favorite vacation. So when I was a girl, I participated in Camp Mitchell on Petty Jean Mountain outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Camp Mitchell was the Arkansas Diocesan Camp and Conference Center, and that played a pivotal role in my faith formation to spend a week there every summer. But in terms of just, I guess I would say normal vacation, when I was a girl, my grandparents lived in a small town called Millwood. It's in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. It's absolutely beautiful. My grandfather used to say the Shenandoah Valley was God's country. And so my favorite vacation was really to be able to go to Virginia and to stay with my grandparents for 2 or 3 weeks in the summer. We had land where we could run around and play. And our family home was located across the street from a historic mill. And so we could be on the grounds of the mill and watch the big, huge wheel turned by water to grind the corn. It was just an opportunity for me to be outside a lot and to have quality time with my grandparents. So I would say that was a favorite sort of regular vacation. And then in terms of international travel, my favorite trip was to Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm fortunate to have been to Cape Town twice in the past maybe 10 years. It is an absolutely beautiful city right on the water, and wonderful people, wonderful culture, wonderful food, wonderful music. That was my favorite sort of big splurge vacation. So if any of you all listening ever have questions that you always wanted to ask the bishop, please do reach out and let us know some of the things that you are interested in learning more about. And so now we're going to have a final hymn.
I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Oh, I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Yes, I am, and I promised him that I told him I'd serve him till I die. And I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Well, I was alone and idle, and I was a
Tell somebody we just having church, that's all.
So we are back. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Faithfully Memphis. You know, we now are broadcasting this show wherever you can hear or access your podcasts. So Spotify or Apple Music, please do look us up on those platforms and give us any comment or feedback so that we can continue to improve the show. And I wanted to let you know that next week we're going to have not one, but two episodes of Faithfully Memphis. One will be our regularly scheduled podcast, which is about an hour long. But the other is going to be a conversation that I had with Darren Herring, who is the representative of an organization called Faith Journeys. And the Diocese of West Tennessee is sponsoring a trip to Greece in June of 2022. So actually 1 year from now. I believe the trip is maybe 8 or 9 days, and it includes a 3-day cruise. And we will be following in the footsteps of the Apostle Paul and exploring some of the earliest Christian congregations that he founded in what is now modern day Greece. So that trip is open to anyone. So if you have been a little stir crazy because of having to stay home, given COVID-19, and you are beginning to think about travel overseas, and would like more information about the Greece trip, which is scheduled for June of 2022, next week there will be a special episode of Faithfully Memphis with lots of details about the trip. And you can always call the diocesan office at 901-937-4700, and we can actually send you a hard copy of the brochure, which will give you the complete itinerary as well as the cost. So until next week, my brothers and sisters, stay safe and stay positive.